Picture this. It's 1996, and a guy walks off a plane at LAX with 5 tiny cannabis cuttings tucked into his luggage, and by the time he lands, 4 of them are already dead. The one that survived would go on to take over Los Angeles, dominate hip-hop, and become the genetic backbone of nearly every strain you've smoked in the last 15 years. This is the story of OG Kush, the California strain that didn't just rule the cannabis industry, it kind of invented modern weed. Pull up a chair, because the history here is messier and stranger than the legend lets on. Here's the thing about OG Kush. You can ask 10 old-school growers where it came from and walk away with 10 different answers. Strip the mythology away, though, and most reputable sources, from Leafly to High Times to the people who were actually in the room, settle on a fairly consistent timeline that begins in Florida around 1991. A grower named Matt Bubba Berger was digging through a bag of a local Florida strain called Crippy, sometimes called Kush berries, and he found a few mature seeds and decided to plant them. One standout female popped, and the Florida crew simply started calling it the Kush. Not after the Hindu Kush mountains, but because they liked the word. Now, this is where it gets interesting. High Times has long argued those Florida seeds were Chemdog descendants, and Chemdog itself traces back to a Grateful Dead show at Deer Creek Amphitheater in June of 1991, where a guy named Greg Chemdog Kshanovsky bought an ounce in the parking lot. Some of that same material reportedly circulated at Dead shows down in Tampa, which connects the Grateful Dead parking lot to the Florida seed that later became OG Kush. It is a good story, and it might even be true, but nobody has ever actually proven it. Everything changed in 1996 when Berger moved to Southern California and linked up with a young Los Angeles grower named Josh Del Rosso, better known as Josh D. The way Josh tells it to Leafly and Beard Bros Farms, Berger flew back to Florida and returned with 5 cuttings. 4 died on the trip, and the lone survivor became the mother plant for every authentic OG Kush on Earth. They say that the first grow happened in a Hollywood apartment under a used 1,000-watt light Josh bought off a newspaper ad, and that was the spark that lit the whole thing. People love the ocean-grown story, and plenty of others swear it means original gangster, a term that rapper Ice-T popularized with his 1991 album, OG Original Gangster. But Josh D has shot both of those down in interview after interview. Talking to Beard Bros, he explained that they called it OG because it was authentic, the original. He put it even more flatly to Dope magazine, saying it does not stand for ocean grown, nor original gangster, it simply means original. Of course, this was Los Angeles, where OG had meant original gangster ever since Ice-T's 1991 album. So even Josh's original is pulling from that same well of West Coast street slang. The ocean-grown version, the one where a grower corrects a stranger at a bar, makes for great marketing, but the man himself rejected it outright. He magazine actually credits Cypress Hill grower Kenji Fujishima as the person who first stuck OG on the front of Kush to separate the real thing from the imitators. For decades, breeders repeated the same lineage like scripture, claiming OG Kush was Chemdog crossed with Lemon-Thai, crossed with a Hindu Kush landrace. It is a clean story, and it is almost certainly wrong, or at the very least, badly incomplete. The reason is simple. OG Kush was never bred. It was found as a bag seed, so nobody documented the cross because nobody ever made the cross. That tidy 3-way formula is really just reverse-engineered guesswork that got copy-pasted across cannabis websites for 20 years. When Phylos Bioscience, the largest cannabis genetic database with over 3,000 strains from 80-plus countries, finally sequenced the plant, they cataloged it as Clone Group GAL 303 63 genetically identical samples of which only 3 were even submitted under the name OG Kush. Everything else arrived labeled as Headband, Skywalker, or simply to be determined, which means it is the same plant wearing a dozen different names. Phylos reached one blunt conclusion, noting it is unlikely the plant shares any heritage with the landrace Hindu Kush, so that famous mountain genetics part of the legend is probably pure myth. Out of that single Josh D. mother grew an entire family of cuts. SFV OG came out of the San Fernando Valley, leaner and more piney, with a sativa-forward terpene profile, while Tahoe OG, sourced near Lake Tahoe, hit like a lights-out sledgehammer with heavy myrcene for that sedative effect. Larry OG ran lemon-forward out of Orange County, Ghost OG carried that pale frosted look, and Triangle Kush, the Florida cut, is sometimes claimed to sit closer to the pre-1996 original than anything that ever traveled west. You know OG the second you smell it. Lemon hits up top, pine sits in the middle, and then a sharp gas station diesel note closes it out with a little skunky pepper at the back. Connoisseurs lose their minds over that combination because before OG came along, you basically had to pick a lane, either skunky like skunk number 1, hashy like the Afghani indica lines, or sweet like the fruit-forward sativa stuff, and OG smashed all 3 together into one hybrid profile. The lab data backs up what the nose already knows. Myrcene dominates, and Steep Hill Labs, one of the first cannabis testing facilities in California, once clocked it at a monstrous 1.25%, followed by heavy limonene for the citrus and beta-caryophyllene for that peppery gas. THC usually lands between 19 and 26%, which does not sound wild today. But in the late 90s, when most commercial weed tested somewhere between 8 and 14, OG was already pushing past 20 and simply hitting harder than anything else on the shelf. Proposition 215, America's first medical cannabis law, passed in California in November of 1996, at the exact moment OG Kush was putting down roots in Los Angeles, and the timing could not have been better. By 1997, Josh was driving north and laying out judges at small Bay Area contests, and that same year, Wonder Brett's Brett Feldman handed a cut to Be Real of Cypress Hill, whose grower Kenji Fujishima dialed it in. Be Real summed up what happened next to Leafly, saying it became queen in Southern California for a very long time. The money got genuinely insane. $8,000 a pound wholesale is what OG was fetching by 2001, which made it more valuable than gold by weight. Once the cut reached the Emerald Triangle, Northern California's legendary cultivation region, around 2004, Humboldt scaled it hard, and by 2008, Cannabis Breeding Authority Kevin Jodry of Wonderland Nursery estimated that out of Humboldt's $8 billion cannabis economy, $5.5 billion of it was OG Kush alone. Hip-hop adopted the strain just as fast. Wonder Brett confirmed they were slipping little glass jars of OG into Dr. Dre's recording sessions for the 1999 album 2001, delivered through Exhibit, and Cypress Hill spun the Bubba Kush offshoot into the track Dr. Green Thumb back in 1998. Dre and Snoop later dropped a song literally called Kush in 2010, and Showtime's Weed's name checked OG Kush in 2005, which Josh D only discovered because his mom called him about it. Rapper Wiz Khalifa built his signature Khalifa Kush off a South Florida OG cut. Be Real built the Dr. Green Thumb dispensary chain, and Berger built the Cookies empire. That family tree is the real legacy here. Around 2011, Bay Area breeder Jigga and the Cookie Fam crossed a Florida cut of OG Kush with an F1 Durban to create Girl Scout cookies, later renamed GSC after the actual Girl Scouts of America fired off a cease and desist. Berger and the Cookie Fam turned those GSC genetics into the cookies dispensary empire that now spans multiple states. From GSC came Sunset Sherbet, Gelato, Wedding Cake, Runts, Jealousy, and Lemon Cherry Gelato, which is to say, pretty much every viral strain of the last decade. Industry watchers now estimate that somewhere between 20 and 30% of modern hybrids carry OG DNA in them. The connections run everywhere once you start looking. Headband is OG crossed with sour diesel. Bubba Kush is Berger's other Florida creation, OG crossed with a mystery indica. Skywalker OG, Fire OG, Kosher Kush, Godfather OG, and the entire gas category of modern weed all trace back to that one surviving clone. Ethnobotanist Robert Connell Clark calls OG Kush the inflection point between pre-modern and modern cannabis genetics, and Phylos calls it the cornerstone of their entire galaxy. Josh D., with characteristic modesty, told Leafly he couldn't believe it became such a huge deal. He added that it wasn't a huge deal because of him, it was a huge deal because of the nature of the plant. So has OG been dethroned? On dispensary menus, sure, the dessert strains run the shelves now. Every single one of those dessert strains, though, has OG sitting somewhere in its family tree, which means OG Kush never really lost at all. It just stopped needing to be on the marquee because half the marquee is now its grandchildren. One cutting survived a plane ride, and that one plant quietly rewrote the entire industry, which is not bad at all for a bag seed out of Florida.